Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back, and if you are new, thanks so much for checking out my channel. Please hit subscribe and stick around. Today, I am doing another Tuesdays with Toni, which is the reading project that I am doing with my friend AJ from AJ Dunn Reads and Writes. We are reading all of Toni Morrison's novels in publication order throughout the year, and today I am talking about Beloved by Toni Morrison. Finally got to this. I'm going to leave a link to our introduction videos along with the playlist in the description box below so you can go and check that out and you can follow along with what we've already done, at least so far. And I will also leave our reading schedule in case you want to read with us. A few things have changed, so the schedule will look a little different. We took more time to get to this video, and at least for now, it looks like AJ will be reading along with me for a bit, but not necessarily putting out videos. So I will keep you posted if anything changes, but let's take a look at Beloved. So Beloved was published in 1987 after Toni Morrison left her job in publishing as an editor. A few years earlier, she had published 4 books, which we've already read, and was now going to focus her energies on her writing. So this is probably, I'm sure it is, Morrison's most popular book. I would say that out of the 5 novels we've read so far, this would be in my top 3. So as with her other novels, there's a lot of layers to this. Beloved was born out of pondering the idea of freedom and what real freedom meant. And it was also inspired by a real character named Margaret Garner. So I wanted to share with you how Toni Morrison describes Margaret Garner, and this is in the foreword of Beloved. It's on Roman numeral 17. A newspaper clipping in the Black Book summarized the story of Margaret Garner, a young mother who, having escaped slavery, was arrested for killing one of her children and trying to kill the others, rather than let them be returned to the owner's plantation. She became a cause célèbre in the fight against the fugitive slave laws, which mandated the return of escapees to their owners. Her sanity and lack of repentance caught the attention of abolitionists as well as newspapers. She was certainly single-minded, and judging by her comments, she had the intellect, the ferocity, and the willingness to risk everything for what was to her the necessity of freedom. The historical Margaret Garner is fascinating, but to a novelist confining. Too little imaginative space there for my purposes, so I would invent her thoughts, plumb them for its subtext that was historically true in essence, but not strictly factual, in order to relate her history to contemporary issues about freedom, responsibility, and women's place. The heroine would represent the unapologetic acceptance of shame and terror, assume the consequences of choosing infanticide, claim her own freedom. The terrain, slavery, was formidable and pathless. To invite readers and myself into the repellent landscape, hidden but not completely deliberately buried, but not forgotten, was to pitch a tent in a cemetery inhabited by highly vocal ghosts. So I liked this, and from this description, in it is clear how the protagonist, Seth, in Beloved came to life. And Morrison pays homage to Margaret Garner by giving her last name to characters in the novel. So Beloved takes place in the later 1800s in Cincinnati, and it begins like all of Morrison's novels so far, and that is with a real sense of place. The first line is 124 was spiteful, and the 124 is referring to the house that Seth and her daughter Denver live in. It doesn't take long, you don't have to go very far to realize that this house is haunted, and everyone who enters it knows it. 124 is also contrasted to Sweet Home, which is the plantation where Seth and another character, Paul D., were enslaved. So like in previous novels, Morrison has this interesting array of characters, and she uses names to contrast the places and people of her stories. So I already mentioned Seth and her daughter Denver, and there is also baby Suggs, who is Seth's mother-in-law, and who has died. And she helps Seth a lot and is very well respected by the community. So early on in the story, Paul D shows up. Although Seth is not exactly what he was expecting, and Denver doesn't warm to him at first, he decides to stay at 124. And then eventually a mysterious woman arrives, and everyone, Seth, Denver, and Paul D, seem to think that the woman is Seth's dead daughter, Beloved. Like, she could be a ghost, but she seems very real, and there are some supernatural things about her. She asks a lot of questions, especially of Seth, and has this desire to learn everything from her and be close to her. So from Beloved asking questions, this is how we as the reader get some of Seth's backstory. We learn about her mother and some events that had happened at Sweet Home. Beloved's presence causes a lot of tension, which I think is what's really big in this book, and things begin to change. So I'm going to leave it there for now so that I don't spoil anything. As I mentioned, there's a lot of layers to this story. There's a number of themes and a lot of symbolism. There's a real sense of past and present, and I've talked about 124, which is, I would say, the present. And then Sweet Home is the past. And although we don't see a lot of it, at least in the beginning, there are moments of hope and foreshadowing towards the future. When Beloved appears, it's clear she represents the past. She gets awkward and uncomfortable when anyone asks her to talk about her own past, but she is the catalyst for Seth and Paul D to face their past. So as we learn about Seth and Paul D's past, we become aware of their experiences, which include prison, rape, and witnessing lynching. And there's also this idea that people cope with their past differently. So Paul D kind of closes his mind to his past, but his time with Seth is reopening that, and now he has to face it. And this kind of gives a sense that healing is possible and that you can move forward into the future. There's also the idea that the past stays alive in the real world somehow. And this is seen mostly with Seth, and of course, I would say with Beloved, and that's what Beloved is about. So jealousy also adds to the tensions. Denver becomes jealous of Beloved because she's taking up so much of Seth's time, and Seth really wants to be with Beloved. Beloved is jealous of Paul D because he is taking Seth's attention away from her. And then there's even the jealousy a little bit of the community of Seth and Denver because baby Suggs treated them so well. So the obvious theme is probably slavery and freedom. And within that is looking at animals versus humans. So sometimes there's examples of how animals have more freedom than slaves. And other times there is comparisons of how people are acting like animals or being treated like animals. So another symbol was trees, and trees are mentioned a lot, especially with Denver, because she finds comfort in nature and spends a lot of time among the trees. And there's times when people in the community would leave food for them when it was needed at the tree stump. But then this is contrasted with violence and darkness, like trees being mentioned when there's a lynching. And I also thought that it was really interesting that when Beloved arrives, she is found at the tree stump. So among all of this, there is still love and hope. Whether we agree with Seth's actions or not, we know that she is willing to do whatever it takes to protect her children from the slavery that she had endured. And I think Denver is the character where we see the future the most. She comes a long way. She comes out of her shell, I would say, the most after being quite sheltered. And the ending left me with a sense of hope, which I think is true for all of Toni Morrison so far. So overall, I felt like Toni Morrison went back to the writing that I enjoyed the most, which was like in The Bluest Eye and Sula. It's lyrical and rhythmic. I really appreciated the use of language, and the descriptions are really great in this. And like many of Morrison's novels, I think rereading this would only show me that I missed a lot on the first reading, even though there was a lot. I think you could reread this and get something new out of it every single time. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention was that I was able to read this book was able to separate myself from the movie, which is all I knew about this story. And I can honestly say that I enjoyed the book more than the movie. But I'm wondering now, that if I saw the movie again, now that I've read it, if I would have a new appreciation for the movie, because I know I didn't understand it. So do you have a preference, or have you seen the movie? Let me know your thoughts about that in the comments below. So the next book that we are reading is the sequel to Beloved, because this is a trilogy, and that is Jazz. And since there's been a change in the schedule, I will be posting the Jazz video in a couple of weeks to help get caught up. I know AJ's already read this, so I'm the one who's behind, so I will get to it ASAP. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the sequel kind of follows Beloved and then where it goes from there. So please let me know if you have read Beloved. What are your thoughts? Did you like the characters? Did you like the story, the writing, the themes? Have you seen the movie? I'd love to hear what you think. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.